Hi, good afternoon. We are meeting Victoria Rivadeneira and myself, Scott Forsino. I'm an associate broker of Real Brokerage. We've both got together and formed PrimeRealEstate.pro. Victoria and I are going to discuss some of the questions regarding this lawsuit and the ramifications. It's a dialogue. It's not fancy. It's not formal. We have some existential questions about why we live in this real estate environment. We're both real estate brokers, and really just we want you to know what we're thinking, and we have some real hard questions for ourselves and for others. Victoria,
How are you today, Scott?
happy to be here.
Happy.
Mhm.
What makes you happy today?
Got back to Florida. I'm hearing it's 20 degrees in New York, so I'm here in a much more comfortable place.
Yeah, you are not a cold weather
Yeah.
person.
Born in the wrong state. I've heard of people born in the wrong era. I'm born in the wrong state.
Well, you live in the right state now.
So, what's real quick? Your background, where you are, why you want to tell us about this?
Oh, my background. 37 years in the real estate industry. I've been in every role possible. It's definitely a passion. I really applaud agents for all the hard work that they have done in the past. I am fascinated by what's going on with these lawsuits because we're seeing things that you and I have questioned over the years that were just put into place and everyone just followed along. Now we're seeing that there's potential problems with the way we were doing business, and I think I'm mature enough to acknowledge that and say, yes, there are things that needed to change, and here we are. We're about to change, and I'm fascinated with what I said before because agents just are protesting, like you said, and they're throwing tantrums because they don't want it to change. And the reality is it's changing. So we really need to be a little bit more solution based and figure out, how do you survive now that this change is coming down?
Right. So, I mean, look, there's the lawsuit. We're casually talking about lawsuit happened in Missouri. Halloween was decided 8-0. A verdict came down. There were allegations that the clear cooperation policy required by NAR created inflated prices. It restricted trade. It didn't let commissions be subject to the local market conditions. There's because it's antitrust and it's federal law. There was a certain standard where if it happened, it's violative. There's no good reason it could be offered. So really what happens is, or what we're forecasting, because the Real Estate Board of New York made this happen already, and the Department of Justice is intending to eliminate, which sounds counterintuitive, pro to pro. They don't want professionals who basically screwed up too much to be in control of compensation in a real estate deal. So the question we've gone back and forth is, if you're a real estate agent and you want to work with buyers, what do you do when there's no commission offered by the seller?
Mm-hmm. That is the big question. First of all, I want to go back and talk about some of the things that you just mentioned. When you say that they are calling for the commissions to be uncoupled, basically, they don't want the listing agent to offer compensation in the listing agent agreement that offers compensation to the buyer agent. And that really actually makes sense, doesn't it, Scott?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's such a, I'm so conversational, but it makes sense. You got to negotiate and hire the person you like in everything, whether it's your dentist or your landscaper. And somehow that's been so convoluted that there's been people both unscrupulous and who are just inadvertently giving their assessments, which has really been dangerously delivered to people, such as services are free. A lot of the things that are
Mhm.
done in real estate.
Right. I was wondering where you were, what you were referring to when you said unscrupulous, because I think that agents were doing what they were taught to do, and I don't think they were doing anything with any malintent. However, what you just said now clarified that when you say, when agents are saying, you don't owe me any money, my services are free. And it's interesting because you hear that even now. I'm looking out on social media and I see agents saying, I don't understand what the problem is. I help buyer agents and it doesn't cost them anything. What's the problem? But it is costing them, and it's hidden into a contract that they didn't write. and their buyer has no ability to negotiate that, that's where it becomes very unfair. And that, to me, watching all this unfold, it really does make sense. And again, if a buyer agent is really good at what they do, they will survive this,
I mean,
but they will need to get that compensation.
I mean, whenever I talk on this subject, any of these subjects can be completely off the cuff. It's just an analysis of what we learned. I'm not admitted to the bar. I'm not your lawyer. I'm a nobody's lawyer, but I have some real strong feelings. And if you listen to what this plaintiff's lawyer in these seminal cases, he uses some really negative terms. He's calling this criminal. He's calling this what's the other word? What's the word? Scheme. He's calling it. What's the other word?
He's saying the system was rigged.
Rigged. And it's his job to portray these entities in the most negative possible light. It's his job, and he does it well. Just so you know what everyone's up against, this guy Michael Ketchmark has never lost a trial. His lowest verdict was for $1 million, and that was years ago. He's taken on the big institutions like pharma and tobacco, things that you would think are impenetrable. And now he basically he didn't see realtors, he didn't see your neighborhood realtor, he didn't see your friend. He saw a system, and he's reflecting what the government is thinking about. These investigations are 2018. This is not history. This is not law school. We see the industry from a little bit higher, I think, and say, the people who relied on this clear cooperation policy are already now in trouble, or if this judge's decision comes down and gives all the relief that the plaintiff sought, which I am on record right now saying he will.
I think he will too. And Michael Ketchmark, not to interrupt you, but he has been calling for that. He's been calling for that, injunction permanently, nationally and permanently. And you mentioned Rebney earlier. They jumped right on board the very next day.
Right.
And I do think the judge will
I think so.
That.
This happened, and you got to realize, I mean, Ketchmark, like any attorney, is supposed to be a zealous advocate. His clients are people. He's looking for their damages. So in any lawsuit, there's liability and damages. Donald Trump sued the USFL. USFL was trying to compete with the NFL. And they really did a good job, but he owned the New Jersey Generals, and he said, you know what? The USFL did this. He sued the NFL, I think, whatever it was. He had a big fight, and he won. He won on liability. But guess what his damages were? Nothing. So they had $1.
$1.
Supposedly Trump. So in this case, Ketchmark showed liability in a strict sense, and now he wants money for his people, and he's not going to stop. So the people understand that, we're just giving the background, but that's just not the point.
Right. No, he's not stopping. He already filed another lawsuit the very second he won the case in Missouri. And I feel that he'll probably file many more.
Yeah, why wouldn't he? And also, one was for sellers and one for buyers. So one was looking for $600 billion, and one is going back to 1996. So if you can't see this as like a blizzard, this is all across the country. So agents have a problem, and people have a problem, because if you want to buy a house, none of your friends or your experience, you never paid for the excellent services provided by a realtor. Listen, I'm a realtor. My mom's a realtor. You're a realtor. I love them. I think they perform the best service. They do more for anyone than probably anyone else in this country. They could help you with things. Here's disclosure. Here's neighborhoods. Here's how the process works. Realtors will always help you more than anyone else because they care.
I totally agree with that. I think that real estate agents are some of the best people. We're very generous. We're kind. We really do care. We want to make a positive difference in people's lives. I don't see what they're now being portrayed as. However, having said that, I will say I am not happy with seeing all the tantrums that are going on. I think that we really need to start focusing on what we can do as a solution to this. The system that agents were taught under was flawed. It was definitely flawed. And looking at it now, after all of this has come out, you can see the flaws. They're screaming at you.
We're going to go over and analyze it. But listen, according to American jurisprudence, the way you say the United States is a nation of laws, a jury of these plaintiffs' peers said unanimously, you're right. And they gave and it took 150 minutes. It took 4 questions. And we've been telling bankers and realtors, listen, 8 people, because one was relieved for unknown reason, are going to decide your livelihood. So your only choice is to pivot. So we don't. But that's not even what we're here to. I have a lot of questions, some basic questions.
Yeah, I do too. So what questions do you have?
Well, let me tell you, I'm great at questions, but I don't have the answers. I always said I'm great at questions. I can ask things, I can prompt things. We can be all over the place with the suit, and these underpinnings are really why we have this problem. And
And
back
I know your number one question.
is why. Which one? Fiduciary.
I can tell you. You say it every single day, and you have put it out on social media. You're asking everyone,
Oh,
and I've
okay.
not seen anyone give you an answer.
How are they going to?
Your number one question, and correct me if I'm wrong, is what will agents do when there is no compensation put into the listing agreement to get them paid?
Right. And we've spoken to many, many bankers who should be in the position of protecting their agents because their relations and referrals from the past and the future. And agents, to be fair, I've never been trained on getting a buyer's agency agreement. There are pockets of this country where it's just not done. I mean, no one's been trained or experienced in demonstrating their value. That people have lived under the blanket of this security of buyer compensation, buyer's agent
Now,
compensation.
I will disagree with you on that. I will say that I believe that agents have been trained on how to get buyer representation agreement signed. I don't think they were trained on how to demonstrate the proper value to get that contract signed and paid in full to the
Right.
agent directly.
You're saying you're saying they were trained to get it, but that was as an ancillary or additional with. So if 2 was offered, using no number specifically, and they wanted 3, they had to get it. So what you're saying, they almost always had to get compensation above what was offered, never exclusively, right? That's
Right.
what
And not always. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, most agents have not done that, but there are quite a few out there that were getting their agreement signed, but they weren't going for the full amount. And I've not, in my 37 years, I've not seen anyone say, oh, no, listing agent, I already have my agreement with my buyer. I don't need that extra that you have in the listing. So we're going to work on negotiating the price down for that difference. I've not seen that.
okay,
That
I
doesn't
got it.
happen, but I've not seen that ever.
Okay, so we this is interesting. The word of this millennium has been pandemic, right? It's more the word. Okay, so if we break down out of America, what percentage of people were affected by COVID? Is it 10? Is it 15? It's not 80, it's not 50, right?
Mhm.
It's not 1 out of 2 people, and 1 out of 2 people died. It might be as low as 5%, right? I don't know. I'm
I don't
asking.
know. I don't know.
Well, how many of your friends, didn't survive it? So it's a low number, right?
Right.
And then there's
Very
varying
few.
kinds.
Right.
Okay, so that was called a pandemic. Imagine the 1.5 million realtors in America all affected. That's the pandemic. That means if any realtor, if this injunctive relief, if this happens, that means that is a pandemic agent loses their expectation of being paid by just being involved in the deal. So this is a
You
pandemic.
once said, right now, if all this, creates this tremendous change, 1.6 million real estate agents that belong to the National Association of Realtors, they will all be affected. That means that basically they're going from full-time to part-time. Those are your words. You said
Yeah,
that before. And
because if you
that
go to
really
work,
struck me.
okay, well, yeah, the word part time is bad because it means you're less professional. But if you go to work 5 days a week and you get paid for 2.5, you're part time. You get paid part of the time. And before agents had 100% expectation, and now they have. I mean, they're only going to eat what they kill,
Right.
and they haven't been trained to hunt.
And I think the training that they did get isn't going to justify the commissions that they are used to.
Oh, that's a huge point. And I mean, look, I'll knock the industry. I'd love to knock the industry. We've had incessant borderline mind-numbing discussion of social media. And even that, National Association of Realtors, don't get me started, said in March 2023 that of 2021, 2022, 1% of, and this is in our report, I think it's page 31, said that 1% of consumers, 400,000 polled by NAR, pick their agent from social media. So all we
1%.
do is pray to the altar.
1%.
1%. And it goes from 20s to 60s, which is crazy. You'd think the young people would fall prey to more reels than anything else. But the fact is, when you're putting tens of thousands down and borrowing hundreds of thousands, you may want to ask that annoying Uncle Bob or what goes on here, or your dad or someone, right? So this industry has been praying to the altar of social media with 99% failure. So the industry, the boards, the state, you and I were looking just now at the Inman Conference and Triple Play, which is New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. They're giving this no attention under exigent circumstances. There's no one being taught what to do if and
Why do
when
you think that is?
Because it's a very unpopular subject.
Mm.
You know, it's something they haven't done. They've never addressed buyer agents unless elective, as we're described. There's never been a requirement to do something unsavory. Now, I mean, how many times have you heard preparing for a listing appointment? We prepare, we do CMAs, we dress nice. I mean, they compete, but that seller after listing agreement needs to buy a house. We just throw everything out, and because we're friends, you know, or because you've developed a relationship and you have respect for each other. And guess what? That's a good thing.
I want to go back to, why do you think that is? Why are they not talking about it? You're saying because it's not a popular subject. I think it's the most popular subject there can be right now.
No, it's the most prevalent subject, but people are not talking about it in offices. I spoke to 3 different boards, attorneys, and they're waiting. Everyone's waiting for what's being handed down. I think here's the real answer. I think everything's going to be reactionary. No one is doing anything proactively. They're going to wait to hear when the meteor hits, and then you're a Brontosaurus and I'm a T-Rex. And what do we do now?
Why am I the Brontosaurus?
I think, well, because they're herbivores and they're not meat eaters.
Okay.
So
I'll take it.
right.
I think that people don't want to hear the truth. They want to live in the illusion of what was going on in the past. I have this metaphor that's in my head that, you know, that the train is leaving the station and everyone in the industry is just hanging on to the train and the bodies are just flapping in the wind. Like they're hanging on. They don't want it to end. But the reality is there was a trial and they lost. And there's a whole bunch of other lawsuits coming. And you
have a plaintiff's attorney who's been emboldened. He's been emboldened, and now there's copycats, and I don't mean copycat lawsuits. We're seeing social media posts if you've been harmed by an agent, like it's like asbestos.
Right.
So now agents are being treated like asbestos.
Right.
They're fishing for a class to be certified. It's ridiculous. And on top of that,
and why wouldn't they?
Well, how about the DOJ started in 2018? They put a deal in place before COVID, and then they backed out because they didn't think it was strong enough. They wanted to terminate professional to professional, which I said before is counterintuitive. Wouldn't you always want professionals to talk? No, because they were working within a system, so they wanted that was violative. I mean, you could say this in 3 words.
I don't think it's that they don't want professionals to talk. I think they don't want commissions hidden in somebody else's contract.
And that could only happen through professionals. So if you listen to Catchmark's podcast, the problem is professionals like stockbrokers worked, either they put it in place or they kept it in place. Keep in mind, NAR had to ratify this approach every year. So members of NAR didn't say, oh, wait a minute. They ratified it every year. So they said, this works. There's a lot of dues. There's a lot of transactions, a lot of happy clients. Real estate's booming. It's a big part of the gross domestic product. So this is not a one-time in 1960. This year was ratified. So they're keeping up the policy. That's why professionals, and I'm saying it a little bit, conversationally, they don't want professionals involved. They want to make it a consumer, just like Rebney did without getting to that. They want the parties to ask. And they want Rebney wants the parties to ask for professional assistance, like you always say, guidance and facilitation.
Right.
For
I
real.
do think that. I think that the public does still want guidance. They want assistance. They really don't know. Maybe they only bought one house, or maybe this is, their first house, or, even, go across a whole lifetime. How many houses does somebody really buy? They really don't know the process, especially if they're going from state to state. So they do want the guidance. They're not opposed to that. I think where the problem lies is they don't understand how much this is really costing them, especially when agents used to say things like, it's free, don't worry about it.
Right. And they have no idea, without getting into finance part, if you're financing, if you're buying a house and it comes with a commission, then you're putting 80%, 90% down, whatever. No, 80 or 90% loan amount and 10 or 20% down, whatever that amount is, 30 years amortized.
Hmm.
So it's never going to be the same unless it's a zero interest rate, which doesn't exist. It's going to be more than you initially started. They
Right.
don't
But
know the
think about the numbers, though. Think about, how much money that comes out to. And this is where it's probably an unpopular opinion, but when you're talking about a $700,000 house and you're talking about 6%, you're talking $42,000. Even if you're only talking about the 3%, that's still 21, $700,000 house is $21,000. So $21,000 now added onto the price of the house, amortized over 30 years. That's quite a bit of
right.
money.
So if you, let's say you're doing 80% of the 20, the price, which means 81% of that amount of money, 21, that's what, four. So you did not agree to finance another 17,000, which is God knows what, it's 26,000 over 30 years. So look, these are all the reasons that the critics and then the plaintiff took action, and they said this is a flawed system. And so we only tell you this because it's our professional assessment. Anyone can disagree that you have a problem. Realtors have a problem. It's huge. It's never been like this. And if you don't want to disagree now, what happened in the immediate aftermath is that people protested. Naturally, they're now told what they did was
Right.
a scheme.
Everything they knew to be right has changed. It's completely turned upside
And
down.
I'll tell you what, besides that, everything they knew was for the right reasons. People look at the good that they did and did for me and did for
Mhm.
you and we did. You have a first time buyer that is able to not come up with a substantial amount of closing costs. Of commissions. They got professional services which helped people a lot. It gave them guidance, it gave them insight, it made the process familiar. If they did nothing else, Victoria, they held their hand.
Mhm.
Right? They held their hand.
They gave them guidance.
They made them feel comfortable in such a daunting process as this. You don't do many times. And listen, if you're a surgeon, you don't have a clue as to how this works. Some of my fancy smart friends are getting everything wrong now. They're like, and I go, you're 50 years old. They don't know
Mhm.
anything. So that person needs guidance. So, we're talking about agents have a problem. We're talking about the reasons because the government does not want this to continue. And we're talking about you're getting no help when in this verdict came out 4 weeks ago today. We've
Mhm.
heard from the president NAR one time making statements where there's going to be appeals and it's going to be won. They didn't give any information to the members what an appeal consists of, how it looks,
Mhm.
how likely it's to be won. Then after that, some 8 lawyers got on, and I think they give misinformation where they said that the proper grounds for appeal, we haven't heard from them again.
Right.
So,
I think it will be very difficult for them to have an appeal, don't you?
well, yeah, they have to go through the steps. They got to bond it, and they got to file a meritorious appeal within 30 days. It's pretty daunting. So,
Right.
and they also, and what bonding, what surety company is going to say 5.4 million? And, Rob Hahn said it may not be 5.4 because nobody's going to be able to do that. There might be 10% of that. But then the question
Which
is,
is still quite a bit of money.
just,
And are they really worth that? Do they have that kind of, even if they liquidated all of their assets and they came in with all of the money, there's still going to be the next lawsuit. Are
right.
they
And
going
the
to do it
only reason
again?
we're talking about things that are far above my pay grade is because we're talking about my whole point is you have a problem. Is that
Right.
four
You have
words?
a
Four
problem.
words. And if you think that you're hearing this is going to on social media commentary, and about opinions, everyone has one like an elbow, then you just are hearing some hope.
Mhm.
So the real nuts and bolts here is to earn income in this industry. What will you do? How will you pivot? And
And you're talking about if there is a permanent injunction that comes down, that would mean that the listing agent can no longer put the compensation into the listing for the buyer agent. The sellers would not be paying that anymore. In fact, it would be in violation to do so. So now the agent has to go directly to the buyer and discuss what their fee is and what is it that they do to earn that fee, and
okay,
then get it signed and put into a contract before going out. Now that changes everything, and I think that there's a disconnect here where people, agents, brokers, NAR, everyone in this industry, lenders, all think, well, it won't matter because the seller will still do it. They won't be able to do it.
well, and okay, so you're describing the most extreme remedy, and that's the most extreme relief, and I believe that's going to happen given the
I believe
climate.
that will happen.
Okay, but let's pretend I'm nuts and it doesn't happen, because keep in mind there's a settlement, the two settlements, Remax and Anywhere, formerly Realogy, where they agreed on money, but they said they'll change their ways. It doesn't mean that they talked about disclosure, and then the DOJ says, I don't care what you two private entities do, we don't think that these modifications to the disclosure has enough teeth. So you're
Mhm.
dealing with daddy, the government. I mean, here. So let's pretend it doesn't become a complete
Right. So in
abolition.
other words, even if the judge says, okay, that would suffice, DOJ is saying it does not. It's not
Right,
enough.
but even if let's pretend there isn't a termination, just the fact that there is no longer a requirement of the CCP to pay, that means some people are going to say, wait, I want to save money and I don't want to offer it. If I can, this
Mhm.
hard earned equity, and keep in mind on the capital gains exemption, this money, if it's 250,000 if you're single, 500 if you're married, why am I going to give X% of my equity? So, I mean, why don't I just take my chances? Because here's another thing: sellers could hedge their bets. They could start on Monday, offer nothing, and if they need it, they think they could then offer 2, 5,
Mhm.
28. I mean, it's not a number, but my position is just the fact that it's not required means you have the flexibility. You could do what you want. So that
Right,
really, so that means you can start with just like a FISBO. Oh, I'll
right.
start on my
Not
own.
required, but it's still an option.
It's
But
still
what if it's
voluntary.
no longer an option?
Right. But I'm saying yours is an extreme remedy. I'm saying let's pretend they give you, lukewarm water. It might be that. So my point is, regardless of any of these circumstances, there has to be pivoting, because there's no longer 100% reliance upon the buyer agent compensation. Okay, so you and I are spending some time on this
Right.
because we really want to hit home there's a problem. We're going to get our haters, they're going to say no. And naturally there's people who are going to just
There's
protest.
really, I mean, there should be no hate here. We're just observing what's been going on, and there is a problem. I mean, I don't think anyone can deny that. There's going to be a problem.
Okay.
And here's my question. So now a buyer is looking for a house. They decide that they do not want representation. I know everyone's saying, oh, they all want representation. I think that many do, but there are buyers out there that will say, wow, this has come down. I can save money. I don't really need representation. I can pull the comps. I can see everything that's on Zillow. I know the market. Most of the public's intrigued with real estate. They're watching all the shows. They're on Zillow. They're doing the tours. They know the neighborhood. They know exactly the commute. They know everything that they need to know in order to purchase this house, and they make a decision that says, I do not want representation. So now they go straight to the listing agent.
Okay,
Now,
but that's one question. That means they're going to be treated as a customer. But you asked
well,
before also.
maybe they might be treated as a customer, or at that point, there is something called dual agency that is very legal in a lot of states. So now, will a commission be built in on the buy side? Does the buyer have the right to say, I don't want to pay that commission? I
Okay,
don't want representation. I want to be treated as a customer. I don't need representation. I know this is the house I want. I'm willing to pay X for it. I want that extra that you're going to
Okay,
charge
so
me as
you and I, okay, so here's the, I get what you're saying. So let's say, look, everyone wants representation. I want a steak dinner. I just can't, I don't want to pay for it. So the question is, yeah, I'll take, right now it's perceived
not
as cheating.
everyone wants representation.
No, I think they do, because why would you want less protection? My point is, now they're going to be given a choice whether to pay for it or not. So who wouldn't want more protection, more safety? Does that roof
What
leak?
protection do you really give? That's part two of my question.
All right, well,
And that
protection.
goes back to when you said agents were not trained, and I said I think they were trained. I just don't know if they were trained to the level where they can articulate the exact value of what they're doing for that representation. If you're showing me how you can truly represent me and I can see value in it, yeah, I may raise my hand and say, yes, it's worth it. I'll do it. But what if, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, so, what if I am a buyer and I say, I don't want representation. I know the value of this house. I know what I'm walking into. I have an attorney that's looking over all of the everything that's in the contract.
The
So I
rights and
feel that that would
obligations.
protect me. I have a title company, so they're going to protect me on anything, from the past. And I have a bank that is going to make sure that I don't get into something that's going to be a bad investment, because they're on the hook for it too. So they're going to make sure that it appraises and everything is done right and all the inspections are done. Why would I want to pay X amount more? Now,
Okay.
you are the listing agent and I go directly to you, and in your contract, you now are representing the seller, but now I come to you. Do you tell me that I'm now your buyer agent too, and you don't have a choice? Or do I have the right to say, I don't want a buyer agent?
That's a great question. And I know that I think that I think I have the information, but it's a bad one. So it's apples or oranges. I want to be a customer. Okay. Be a customer. That means you're not getting representation, and the listing agent will treat you as a customer. They just have some obligations, fair honesty and fair dealing and all that. Got it. You're overtly stating, I don't want representation. But in that case, the commission that the seller is paying is still affecting the price. So you are still paying more money than you otherwise would. So it's not like you could reject representation and get a lower price. You could reject representation and pay the same price.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Maybe.
problem. What do you mean,
I,
maybe?
I think anyone who would opt for no representation is probably looking for the price to come down.
No way, because that's the whole point that we lived under forever. It used to be like, oh, go directly to the listing agent. I'll save money. No, you can't. That
Yeah.
doesn't change the contract between the listing agent and the seller. Doesn't. It
Right.
just means, there may be some inherent logical leeway and wiggle room where you get a lower price. But if everything is just the standard, so really, is there any difference between being represented in a dual agency and being a customer? Either way, you are paying what you didn't agree to pay. You're
Mm-hmm.
financing with or without representation. The
Okay,
price
I have
doesn't.
another question for you. Okay, so again, I'm going to play this out because these are the scenarios that go through my head when I see this all coming down. Because I look and I say, what would be the next problem? And how would we pivot to come up with this kind of a solution? So here's my next question. I'm a buyer and I call you and you're the agent and I say, I would like to go look at this house. Or better yet, you're a friend and I say, you know what, Scott, I'm looking at 123 Main Street. I would really like to get in. And you say, you know what, Victoria, I'd be more than happy to take you over there. And I'll be your buyer agent. And I say, okay, fine. And we go over to the house. I meet you there. And I know I like the house. There's the sign right in the lawn, which I already know who the listing agent is anyway because I found it online. And then you hand me the buyer representation agreement. You say, well, remember I said I would represent you. Here's the agreement. This is what I charge. And I look at you and I say, well, that's very nice, but I'm not willing to pay that. And now what do you do?
Well, you're talking about the curb conversation, which I made up, which is why the professionals say have a buyer consultation, make them understand that there could be responsibility and liability. It's not loyalty, it's liability. Liability for my compensation if and when there isn't money offered by the seller. And they say yes. And then the buyers would call protect. Then the buyer's agent is called protected. But if you don't have that and you're relying on the relationship, quote unquote, then if a buyer is faced with the prospect of paying an amount of money that they never thought they would or should or never heard of this happening, they could say, no, I'm just going to go this alone. I'm going to reach the extremely accessible listing agent and just take my chances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now there's even more to that. So now I say, okay, Scott, I'll sign it. I sign, we walk in, I like the house. I tell you, let's do this. You negotiate. You even do a great job negotiating. We get to closing and I'm told I have to bring in X amount of money. I didn't think I had it. Why am I paying all this money? And then I look and the biggest number there is your commission. And I say, I'm not paying it. Well, you can't stop the closing because it's not part of the listing agreement. This is an agreement between you and I. So,
and even if even if it was a part of the listing agreement, the realtors are not buyers and sellers. They can't stop it. Period. Lawyers can't stop it. Lawyers that don't get paid, we're not closing. Sure you are. There's a deed and there's money. You're closing. There's nothing to do with ancillary service providers like a mover or a painter or a realtor. They're not above. There's no such thing as, I've been part of a transaction.
I think that we felt a little bit more protected when everything was in the listing agreement.
Listing agreement is not part of the deal. The listing agreement is a private deal between you and a client. We have a contract of sale, which is simply money for a section, block, and lot. It's all it is. It's the simplest. You owe me money, and here's me tendering the premises.
So you're saying nothing would change. So if I decide I don't want to pay you according to our contract, you would have to sue me the same way you would have sued me if it was in the listing agent anyway. If it was
absolutely, yeah, it's just a breach of contract. And then the question becomes, how many agents have the support of their broker who are prepared then and now to enforce that agreement and sue and carry it out, because it may not even be financially worth it. If the commission's $20,000, they're going to spend $10,000 legal fees to get it, and it's going to wait a year and a half and depositions. Oh, you told me this, and we definitely get a new roof. And that foundation, now we get in a factual disagreement. It's a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Because at least in the listing side, in the New York style, or even the title company states, you have a checklist. You got to pay off your taxes. You got to pay off your mortgage. You got to pay the realtor. It's one of those understood, accepted costs. In this case, it's outside the transaction. It's outside. It doesn't even have to be paid at closing. You can give me my commission a week early. Why not?
Or a week later.
Or a week later. I promise I'll get it to you.
The check's in the mail.
Or even if you say, I'm not paying, we have a big fight, and you say, you know what, that's wrong, I'll pay it. But so we're going from, okay, let's even go further. So in every board, there's the arbitration thing. Let's say Century 21 has a deal with Coldwell Banker. There's no world that I'm aware of where brokers stiff other brokers. That would not last for 1 minute in any board, right? That's just like, that's as like forbidden as forbidden can be, right or wrong?
Right. I agree. There was definitely cooperation and there was camaraderie in this industry for sure.
Right. So there's there's a serious immediate penalty for playing games like that. It would you go to arbitration and the office could be suspended and a big deal. Then they refer to the state.
Right. The listing broker is not responsible to make sure that you're getting paid when I'm the buyer and I tell you I'm not paying you.
You mean outside the transaction, like you're describing?
Mm-hmm.
The listing agent is not involved. There's no, in the law, there's the notion of privity of contract, where there's A to B to C. So there's there's the seller to the listing agent to the buyer's agent. They're different rights. So this selling agent, we know this seller's got to pay the listing agent, and then the selling agent got to pay the buyer's agent, but within their board, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think these things.
And that's my point. That's the way it was. How will it be moving forward? This will become a problem.
Sure. And that's another thing. And then, so number one, you're talking about enforcement. And how many brokers are loath to do that because they're afraid of getting the name, and then they get in a pissing match, and then you're named in 14 lawsuits. So there's that, and that's it. That's enforceability, which is not at all practical. Because even if it's 5% of the deals, it's a mess. There's that, and plus, you're counting your money, you're getting the closing cost. You never heard of a New York State mortgage tax. You didn't know that's your biggest cost. In New York State, there's mortgage tax,
Right.
there's mansion tax, which is now, I
Right. An
understand.
extra 0.25%, right?
Yeah, could be, and it goes up and up. I think 2 million more, and then there's even on Long Island section certain environmental, the Conic tax. They preserve open lands on a, I think on like $1.5 million deal with $1 million loan, and the Peconic, which is crazy. You could, before you paid $1, you could end up with like 50 something thousand in taxes,
Mm-hmm.
mortgage tax, mansion tax, and Peconic. It's crazy. So now
Yep.
that person is going to come up with another 30,000. But there are ways to train agents to demonstrate their value. We know them, so
Right.
that's fortunate that we can do that. However, you talk about enforceability, but then I'm considering the other side, the race to the bottom. If there, I mean, this is a point now where Victoria says, I want X. Well, that's too much. And then Scott says, I want Y. Now they can shop agents' commissions around. And why
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't they? So this agent, just like this house painter, man, he's crazy. He wants $5,000 for one room. This house painter, oh my goodness, he wants 500. So you know that exists. Or someone wants to, landscaping what does landscaping cost? Anything, cost everything and
Yeah,
anything.
there's going to be a variety of different things that will happen now that everything has been uncoupled. If they uncouple the commissions, which is the injunction that they're looking for, so that's one. And then they're also saying that they don't want mandated membership to the National Association of Realtors, which I believe Anywhere and Remax already agreed to. What happens to the National Association of Realtors?
Well, there's costs associated with it, so that's a natural disincentive. The other thing that there's the lobby, which is super super important to keep the correct and the appropriate policies in place. So you may weigh that against it. Then the question is, hey, can NAR exist as a lobby without me? Probably can. Then the next question, which I love and you love, is the code of ethics. So we said before offline in a private secret conversation, uh, how many deals involve the code of ethics? I mean, if you go line by line, if you're honest,
Mm-hmm.
that's one requirement. You should be. If you convey all offers, you should be. What are you doing by hiding an offer? That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
You're not necessarily trashing another agent, so that's easy. You're not ever soliciting another represented client, the seller. You're not ever saying that's an easy one. Of course, I don't have the top of my head, but I would say that invocation of a provision of the code doesn't happen at all if you just fly right. I mean, do you need a code of ethics? Aren't you ethical?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean,
Right.
so
And I think most agents out there wouldn't need to have somebody tell them you must abide by these. They already do. That's how they live their lives.
okay. So I'm saying
So
it's a
why
very
would I
low
pay for this now?
it's a very low percentage of deals that require any invocation of each law. And then the better question is, this one, does the public care? Is it a term like Xerox or Umbrella or
Nope.
Kleenex? They don't have any appreciation
Nope.
between a person and member. They don't.
No. If I tell you I'm going to save you $30,000, I'm only going to charge you this amount, and that other agent over there is going to charge you that amount. You're gonna go with a $30,000 difference? Yeah, I'll take my chances.
But you even asked where would NAR go, and I'm telling you that if the public does not see any difference, it's not like someone is about your health or a financial planner, and they have gotten results and they cure cancer and they get major profit. So I don't think anyone in the public says, "Oh, they're a realtor. I gotta have a realtor. I don't want a licensee." Come on, you want a licensee? I mean, I don't want a ring. I want a Tiffany's. I don't want a motorcycle. I want Harley. Right?
Maybe. Do I want to pay for that?
Some
Depends.
people do. Christmas is
Look,
coming.
I'm playing devil's advocate all the way
I
because
know, but
we have to look at the negatives to every one of these situations so that we know how to deal with it.
right. But there's people who want to wear this designer brand, or need need some significance, some social status, and licensees are probably good enough. Now, you asked me what's happening to NAR, and I'm thinking licensees are good enough. In my mind, that's the public, unless I'm
You
crazy. I've
think
never
what?
heard. You asked me what happens in NAR, and I'm telling you that the public does not need anything more than a licensee. They're not demanding a person be a realtor.
So you don't think NOR will survive this?
I think it'll be greatly diminished when people are faced
Mhm.
with the prospect of, wait a minute, I got to go tell people about why I'm the right one to hire at all. They may not be interested, like you said, in hiring anyone. Let's say someone has bought and sold homes, just a starter home, the
Mhm.
family, then they go to the next place, maybe they get a job in Atlanta. They've done this a few times. Some people are sophisticated, or at least they believe they are, to withstand this what they don't see as a tough deal. But they may say, I could do this. At work, I do all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
I'm a contractor. I could look at the 3-page contract generated by the Florida Board of Realtors.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm just saying, and when there's money involved, there could be a race to the bottom. They're going to shop, and the question is, do the realtors want to uphold the standards and paradigm? You've heard on social media, I won't show it for less, which itself is a violation because you have to show everything. You have to put the client's needs above your own. So, we're all over the place. I mean, these are the discussions that have to happen. So, let's get into one that I love, which is, this is like, who built the pyramids? Why does this exist? You'll never know. Why does a fiduciary get paid on a sales commission?
That's a really good question, Scott, because it almost sounds like it would be a conflict of interest, wouldn't it?
You get paid as a buyer, a buyer's agent.
As
You're
a
trying to.
buyer's agent, I am getting paid based on a commission percentage based on the price of the house. So the higher the house, the more I'm going to make, but I'm putting your needs ahead of mine. I don't know.
Where's the incentive? And now what's interesting about that is, if you look at what the realtor makes, so $30,000 to a seller is $30,000. $30,000 to their own agent. Now let's look at the other way. I want 40,000, 400,000 for my house, and my realtor does not get me the full 400. And they say, you know what? You have a paid for house. What's 20 grand? Isn't that really 5% of the house? Well, 20,000 is.
And now
And
he's gone again. Oh, there you are. You're back.
I'm back. Uh, so $20,000 is 20,000 tax-free income to the seller. And how does that affect the seller's listing agent? Extremely insignificantly. So now the listing agent could be throwing away your money, and only affects them a little bit. So that's the what? It's
Mhm.
the inverse of what we're describing, right? So a buyer's agent says pay more, and I get paid more, and a listing agent can say get less, and I get a tiny little bit less. So there's inherent conflicts on both sides. Where why
I
would it?
don't know why a salesperson would ever have to be a fiduciary anyway. And licensees there's so many licenses in different states outside of real estate. They're not fiduciaries. So where did that happen and why? And will it continue? Maybe that's the next thing that will be looked at.
Asking why it ever is the case. So in New York, there's all the bodies of law are in a series called McKinney's. They're black books. And my own lawyer, I go in his office last week, and he's like, "Oh, we're moving offices. Every one of these books has got to go. They're from, he goes, these are just decoration. Everything is, of course, online. So every law book in the world. So there's, C for corporations. There's D for divorce. There's V for vehicle and traffic. Like, wherever you want to know, for C for criminal, or actually P for penal. So A is agency or admiralty. We're not fishermen. So agency, that describes agents. I mean, it means
No,
I'm just
I understand the concept. I just don't understand why are real estate agents working under agency? Why are
right.
they?
Why? And real estate agent, it really just puts the name in there as far as I'm your agent. I work for your as a principal agent relationship. But why did the legislature?
Wasn't it really supposed to be an agent of the broker?
I don't know. I mean, but they're what do you say? What's the word? Affiliated with the broker, right? Aren't you affiliated?
But you're an agent of the broker because everything falls under the broker's license.
And responsible and responsibility and the supervision, all that stuff.
Mhm.
So
So I think that's where agent came into play. I'm an
So,
agent of the
okay, so
broker.
the two questions are, in every state, what was the hell the reason why the legislatures made one licensee, not hairdressers, not alarm installers, not dog groomers, not,
Mhm.
whatever trainers are. Why are
Right.
they, why are they,
Countless number of licensees that are there. Why are real estate agents fiduciaries? And wouldn't it serve everyone better if we just were transactional?
yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know the answer. I think we're both good at asking questions. So why are agents
Maybe
fiduciaries?
that'll be the next lawsuit.
Why are fiduciaries paid on transactional basis, a percentage of the price?
I
Is
think
that,
it would be better if we were all transactional.
or when I'm in these Facebook kind of commentaries back and forth, I just simply say to people, why can't people pay for their own professional goods or services? Why do we carve out an exception for
Mhm.
real estate representation? I mean,
Right.
is there some insidious effort to hide it? I'm not saying that, of course,
Well,
but
Ketchmark said that.
right, he did. But I'm not, a
Mhm.
lawyer for these plaintiffs. Ketchmark is doing his work in a courtroom, but he's also showing contempt for the entire system. That's his job.
Mhm.
But let me bring you to another thing, and this question has plagued me. You finish real estate school, you take the test. I guess you join the board. You have, you're new, you're a young person, or maybe it's your second career. Why can you negotiate?
That's a very good question. And what does negotiation mean?
Okay, so
Because in the last few years, what was really being negotiated?
even so, forget about particular anecdotal conditions. I'm 5'9". That's where I got. I was born with that to get to that height. I'm not in love with it. I wish it was 6'2", but it is what it is, right? So I'm one of them. What gave me the right to negotiate? I had no training, no experience, no education and negotiation is a discipline. It's a discipline. There are institutes. There's one in Newport, Rhode Island.
Mhm.
And there's real serious. It's a discipline, just like um, any kind, even like yoga. You have to have time, experience, commitment, training,
It's
testing.
a skill. There's no
The
doubt. It's a
skill. It's a
skill.
skill. So tell me this. Tell me how realtors finish real estate school or finish this state licensing, took two tests. Where have they been trained or tested in that endeavor?
I think we should ask an agent.
Okay, so I
I
want
think
to
we should
know
ask an agent. I'm not being facetious. I
I'm
mean
being
that.
no. We should ask many agents.
We should ask the agents
What
because
makes
I
if
think part of what their value proposition is when they're asking a buyer to sign a buyer representation agreement, they put in there that they negotiate. And again, playing devil's advocate, I'd like to know, what does that look like? For an
oh
agent who can really demonstrate negotiation skill, hooray, that's fantastic. And there's a value to that. But what constitutes the skill of negotiation, especially when I look back at the last few years? Agents were telling buyers, the market is calling for you to come in full price, above asking, all cash, waive your inspection, waive your appraisal, and they're considering that part of the negotiation. I don't see that as negotiation. I'm sorry.
not at all. But
And
if you ask agents, a lot would say, "Well, I've done this for 19 years." Okay, that means you telling me that you can negotiate
right, that
based
means you
on.
have longevity.
No, that also means, let's say you have developed. Okay, I would say this. So that means maybe you do have a skill in negotiating today. What made you a good negotiator when you started?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you got good. Maybe you didn't get good. Maybe you, did a bad job on all these deals. How do
And
you know?
if you are really good at it, and I can give really good examples, I won't go into it now, but really good examples of agents who really know how to negotiate, who really brought something of tremendous value that got a buyer ahead of every other buyer when the market was going crazy. That was true negotiation skill. That was really good stuff that they were bringing to the table, and they were worth every penny for doing that, because I would watch buyers go out with agents, and each offer was getting denied. Then they'd go to the next house, denied, the next house denied, because they were one of 15, 16, 18 offers, and they were not cash buyers. So how do you handle that? Well, then along comes an agent who really knows what to do, and poof, they get the house, and they're right in the front line, and everything's done properly, and everyone walked away happy. They were worth every single penny. And that's the agent that I would say is a very good negotiator, that can really stand up to whatever happens in this industry, because they can do it. But like what you're saying, we go on social media, we talk to agents every day, hundreds of them. And, you and I are talking to hundreds of agents every day, and we get answers that don't ever really address the question. You have asked agents, what do you do in a negotiation? And then they'll tell you that they, like you said, they have 20 years experience or whatever. And you will always come back at them and say, answer the question. But what do you do? And then they can't. And then it just goes unanswered.
I got it. But okay,
And
using your example, sadly, I actually disagree because what you're describing is anecdotal, not empirical. So let's pretend I could slam dunk a basketball, right?
mhm.
The net is 10 feet on all continents. It's exactly the same. So if I could do it in Europe, I could do it in Canada. Get it? I could do
Mhm.
it in Latin America. I could do it in Asia. You're talking about a realtor that may be good. That means they may have had 10, 39, or 99 different experiences. Different experiences are anecdotal. The same, like the basketball net or the 100-yard dash, is the same everywhere. So maybe they dealt, these agents that you're calling successful, maybe had pushovers. Maybe in market work conditions were 1995 versus 2005 versus 2016. So it could be that so many other factors were at play. Maybe you had, out of those number, maybe has fantastic buyers. Maybe it's crazy wealthy, 999 credit score, assets, credit, income. So really, wouldn't your negotiation skills be less important if you got the best possible buyer? Wouldn't you be a great negotiator or someone who really needed to kind of get into that deal where they may have been on the bubble on the margin?
Well,
You
I'm
see how
not
many?
talking about that. I didn't say the agent brought out a buyer that had a 999 credit score. I don't even think that exists, but
It doesn't. It just
what we're
says
talking about. And I'm talking about the agent that said, okay, I see you as a buyer working with, this agent. You were denied 4 times for a house every time you put in an offer. I see that you went to agent B, you still got denied. Come to me, I'll show you how it's done. I'll take you out. You're not the full cash buyer. You don't have the exceptional credit. You will not stand a chance in the market that we just came out of. But yet, because I'm really good at what I do, and this is what I charge, I will make sure
okay,
that
yeah.
you
What you're
have
talking,
a very good chance
I
at
got it.
getting
So you're
this
talking
house.
about a track record, which was most people go by, but it certainly is. You've ridden a lot of horses, meaning that you've done a lot of deals, and they're all different. So it's not something that could be relied on. So I mean, Sophie, and Victoria, you did all these deals. Doesn't mean you're going to be good in this one because there's a
Mhm.
pain in the neck on the other one. But I'm saying I get it. So those are the few. So I said that most agents, almost all, have no training, education, and experience. You're talking about those that you've met that have had some
Right.
success. But the question is, were they trained? Maybe not. Probably
Well,
not.
most of them were trained. They had to learn how to pivot. in different markets. They had to learn what to do and how can I articulate my value at its highest and best, because the market has changed. Anything I do is not going to work. So I have to figure out how to get buyers into homes, and I have to figure out how to get sellers their homes sold when the market drops, and I have to figure out what to do with somebody who has a lower credit score, and I have to figure out all these different things. And like you said, every single deal is different, but if I'm really good at what I do, can I articulate that? Can I get a buyer
Right.
representation
I
agreement
got it.
signed? 100%.
Right. But my comment was, why can realtors negotiate? Meaning, when they left real estate school, if they've not sought their own training, then they've had no exposure to the discipline and they've never experienced any success in it. That's
No,
my point.
and I agree with you. I think, believe it or not, I think, and I hate to say this out loud, but it's true, and I'm sure others will agree with me. I think the majority of real estate agents that are licensed right now do not have any negotiation skill, and they believe that they do. And if you ask them and you really peel back the onion and say, tell me specifically where your skill is in negotiation, they'll just keep telling you everything other than what describes a very good negotiator. So I think we're basically saying the same thing.
Existence of some negotiation skill or even a lot of success in negotiation. The point is, another flaw of the industry is that we're finishing real estate school, and it used to be very used to be. I know a friend got licensed in real estate Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday. So you're dealing with millions of dollars against seasoned professionals who are armed with lawyers and big banks and great professional resources, and now you're let free in the wild, and you don't have relationships with lenders and title and people who
Mhm.
are really expert in the local area. So you're now here to represent people who you have no negotiating opportunity with.
Running in the same race with seasons professionals.
Right. It's like going to an NFL game and pulling guys out of the stands. That's what we're talking about. And
Are
it
we talking about sports again, Scott?
Yes, exactly. It's a good analogy. And by the way, that fact alone, I don't want to say that fact alone. That is one of the facts that was a real um, allegation that was demonstrated by the plaintiffs in this case, where one of the serious indicia of antitrust violative behavior was having controlled compensation. the
Mm-hmm.
the professional like you got the same as someone 16 days out of real estate school in up in Schenectady that does nothing. I mean, I love these agents that try to do Manhattan work, totally different animal.
Mm-hmm.
Or in other parts of Westchester, if you're not even known in local markets, it makes it even more difficult. If a guy's or woman's, oh, they got a good office, they're nice, they're easy to deal with. This is a person business. So
Right. Well, that will all change now because the buyer agent will have to demonstrate their value to their client, which would be the buyer. And if they are out of school 16 days, it will show. It's not built into somebody else's contract any longer, or at least it probably
yeah,
won't be.
and I find that to be, on behalf of the practitioners like ourselves, I find this to be really objectionable because people were brought into a system that was determined later to be a failure. I mean, the Department of Justice didn't imagine this; they had their own eyes on this, and
Mm-hmm.
then
It was a flawed system, yes.
listen, there's a lot of flawed systems, but this is worse. This is violative of federal
It was. It was violative, yes.
right, and it was. This jury took nothing, and there's an onslaught. I mean, this is really really serious. And if maybe people don't want NAR to uh, survive. I say that any system that can be disrupted must be disrupted, must be.
Mm-hmm.
Because how else does anything advance? So Henry Ford said to the public that his customers wanted fast horses. That's all they wanted. The roads were barely paved. So
Mm-hmm.
his people said, "What? Whoa, whoa, whoa! Cars, gas. I want a faster horse." All my parents, my generations had horses. since the beginning of this country started. Now you're telling us I got to go, I got to pay. A horse costs next to nothing. I got to pay, and it breaks down, and all these things they got to do. They never operated machinery. Let's say you never did. Let's say you're an accountant. You never operated this big, expensive thing, and it was a whole thing. So that situation was disrupted, and it had to be disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you've heard the phrase buggy whips. That's a good business school analogy. There used to be buggy whip manufacturers, so this thing these places went. Look at the disintermediation by E-Trade, Expedia, travel agents, stockbrokers,
Mm-hmm.
commissions everywhere,
Right.
right? But I'll give you an example about travel
But
agents.
real estate wasn't interrupted by technology. That was another thing that Ketchmark said.
Exactly. And something that should be interrupted by technology, where there's disintermediation, like E-Trade or Expedia, and that there
Mm-hmm.
was even this is his words. The fact that technology did not reduce any prices, is I think one of the weaker symbols of control, because it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like, I don't know if there's a conspiracy, but definitely had the effect. I mean, so one of the prime roles of a realtor is, hey, Victoria, I want to move to Staten Island. No, where should I find a house? And now, does that happen? No, the buyers call you while they're looking at midnight on their iPad with their slippers on, and are looking at properties in their price range and area they want to live. So now,
Right. So
think
we
about,
were once the gatekeepers of the information, and now the buyer has more information than the agent. They're contacting the agent. They've already looked at the house. They did a Google virtual tour around the neighborhood. They did the virtual tour inside the house. They know everything there is to know, probably more information than the agent. And yet, with all those changes, everything stayed the same.
right, okay, but just I want to give you a general business notion. Let's use the difference between trial attorneys or even attorneys to a contract. I'm using attorneys because they represent people, just like realtors represent. So it's not apples and oranges; it's apples to apples. It's fair.
Okay.
Those professionals that represent, and those professionals represent. So watch this. You sue someone for breach of contract. You do you put a roof on the house and they don't pay. Okay, so there's a dispute, whatever it is. Each has a lawyer, and one pays one amount for their lawyer, one pays another amount for their lawyer. There is no deal. There's no CCP. There's no policy by the attorneys. We're going to make sure we get paid this based on the recovery, the damage, blah, blah, blah. Nothing like that. And
Or
even
better yet, don't worry about getting paid by your client. I already put it into my contract.
right, and don't worry if I get a big fee, it's built in. You get it. I know we're both being bad to our brothers and sisters here, but there's no deal. We're true advocates. The private arrangement versus, and this has really been a real problem. Let's say I'm a homeowner, and Victoria and I have a great personal, great professional relationship. I want her because she's known to be a top producer. We all know these people. They're the town mayor. They're involved in
Mm-hmm.
the social. They're kids, the whole world. They're known. They're visible. They have a great reputation. They're really, really on top of their game. They've gotten great results, top producer status, all that stuff. Okay, that's the person I want to sell to my house. I know that the buyer is going to be someone who's a stranger. They're a bona fide purchaser. They get a job, they get credit, they get income, all this stuff, assets. They're coming from somewhere. But why is it that I got to have a stranger in my deal? Let's say you're a caterer. You're doing a great job for me. Is there some other profession that comes in and tries to kind of mess up your catering job? Or
Mm-hmm.
representing people that are coming to the event and saying, I don't want that table. I want this table. Oh, you're serving that? I want meat. I don't want fish. Any of these things. I want,
Right.
I want Heineken. I don't want Budweiser. That kind of stuff. So really, you could have a business transaction that is, and this is a big issue. Why do we want someone in our deal where we don't want them in the deal? And the only way, listen, I don't want to be sued either, and I have been sued. If someone wants to sue me, they better damn well get their own lawyer. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that agent in here, and yet that I got to pay him. Why wouldn't it be, hey, listen, you want to break my shoes and you want to get what you want in this deal? I'm selling a house. At least get your own realtor.
Right. Well, I think that's why when we talk about this, this makes sense to us. That's why I don't understand why so many agents are throwing a tantrum and jumping up and down. I mean, I do know they don't like change, and they're holding on to something because maybe they're afraid that they wouldn't be able to continue if things change. But the
So,
reality is, this is the way it should be.
well, then,
I should be responsible for my own contract.
so,
My
all the
buyer should be able to negotiate with the buyer agent, and vice versa. That the listing agent should negotiate with the seller, which has always been done.
So, okay, so you are coming clean, so to speak. You did a lot of deals in Staten Island, you did a lot of deals in your career, you represent a lot of companies, you worked for agents. So, is this your cathartic come to Jesus moment where you're saying, what you're working for on behalf of companies for them to prosper? At some point, at all times, even right this minute, they are they were and are still engaging in a violative practice. So, I mean, our friends and our people that we know are going to say, wait a minute, you're kind of criticizing the means by which we worked.
No, I'm saying that we were taught to do it that way, and we really did believe that we were doing the right thing. But now that has changed. The lights were turned on, and we were told this is violative and this has to change. And rather than saying, no, 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 I'm not going to change, I'm not going to, I'm just not, I'm saying, step up your game. Figure out what to do. Learn how to really truly negotiate. Get that skill up and running. If you're 16 days out of real estate school, you're probably not on the same level as somebody who has 25 years of experience. So you're probably not going to get the same amount when you're sitting in front of someone. But after a few years of experience and learning the way things are, you'll probably get more, just like any other industry. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I'm
Well,
not throwing any agent under the bus. I'm not saying, oh wow, this is what should have happened. I'm saying it happened. We've been told this is an antitrust violation. There most likely will be the uncoupling of the commissions. What will you do about it? That's the
well,
question.
I've heard some speaker trainers, some people held in high regard, said, wait a minute, this is the golden opportunity. Now you're not stuck in these chains of accepting a certain amount and competing. Before, there was really no competition. Everyone was going to get paid no matter what. Now, if you're someone who's either a skilled negotiator or can easily demonstrate your value, or you're at least open to the possibility of getting from here to here, that the competition's not going to. Here's the
Mhm.
things that no one is going to take no one, I say, appreciable number out of a million agents, that they're not going to take the steps and pivot. They're not going to seek certification. They're not going to get better. They're going to just be mad, be gone, or still catch deals here and there. That's
Oh
one.
well. And you
And
know what? It's probably not a bad thing. Every few years, the industry goes through a cleansing. This will probably be one of the largest cleansings it goes through, and that's okay.
okay, and also your state boards, your local boards.
Well, they're all a part of NAR, and if the National Association of Realtors does not survive this, or like you said, they're just very diminished.
I was thinking a minute ago, before I know we both got sidetracked, but an older lawyer I knew, this happened all the time, whether it's divorce, whatever it was. He was kind of a storefront GP, general practitioner, and someone come to him, I got a problem, blah 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 blah. This guy didn't pay me, whatever the nature of any problem was, and I got a problem. What should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? And the guy goes, oh, I agree. He goes, what do you agree with? He goes, you got a problem. So the only question is, do you want to fund some way to address this? You have a problem. I mean, I got a landlord tenant problem right now myself. So I actually do want to do something about it. And I am funding this professional to fix my problem, or at least let me get out of this as easily as I can and be able to move forward. So that's the thing right now. So the industry has a problem just because, and entitlement has a bad word. There really is truly entitlement in the world in a good sense. You're entitled, like Social Security benefit, things that you're entitled to Social Security when you retire, right? So that's not a bad entitlement. It's an actual entitlement. But
Mhm.
the word has become, oh, he's entitled means that he's deserve everything. Well, I'm saying in the benign, truthful sense, the realtors were entitled by being members of the board in good standing to be paid by participating. That's all. It's not a bad thing. I mean,
Mhm.
it's legitimate, it's legal, it's agreed upon, and it's under.
You're gone again. We don't hear you.
So sorry about that. So that means can you hear me? This entitlement is no longer in place. So naturally, there's going to be protest. Naturally, there's going to be the effects will be felt, and there's an opportunity. What if there wasn't a training? What if there wasn't a way to get ahead of this? Wasn't What if we know there's houses for sale. We know there's buyers that need them. We know that there's all those things we mentioned. What is it? Death, divorce, diamonds. That's another one. Getting married or engaged. What about diapers? They say death, divorce, diapers, diamonds,
Mhm.
debt. There's debt.
Right. That all the D's will keep the industry going. People will always be buying and selling houses. I don't think that this is the end of the real estate agent forever. Like they're just going away, and there'll be dinosaurs, and our grandchildren will say, "What's a real estate agent?" I don't think that will happen. I do think that the membership at NAR will be greatly diminished, as you said earlier. They may not even survive. I think that there's tremendous changes, tremendous. And I think we all agree, well, at least you and I agree, that Houston, we have a problem, but I'm really fascinated by the fact that I'm seeing hundreds and thousands of agents with their head in the sand thinking there's no problem. I don't want to talk about it. And
No,
that's not
no one's.
that's not going to help anyone.
They're telling them that there's some misleading information, like we said a moment ago. They're
Mhm.
still there isn't one. There isn't even a decision. And this is only the first case, and it's Missouri, 250,000 people. So this is so preliminary, but you got to read the tea leaves. So they're saying there's no problem, and it really isn't a problem because if you have the right to offer, they will offer it because we do have this excess monopoly money of equity. So if culturally you're expecting to participate and pay commissions, I get it. Lenders have not lost referral partners yet. It will
Yet.
happen. Yeah,
Keyword, yet.
yet. Right. So and rates were super high, so that slowed down people anyway. So you really couldn't perceive the problem. It was people priced out anyway. So we I forgot the point I was going to make. Um, oh, without proper analysis, it's people are going to say it's unfair. And is it unfair? Yeah, I participated in industry. I did everything. I paid everything. Did everything. Learned everything. And got up here. But what I find really really lame and is the leadership of these companies is continuing this violative practice. That's
Yes, it's
I
very
asked,
interesting that I agree with that. It
I,
is very interesting.
I asked the president of a board. I'm sorry, I asked the lawyer for the board. I said, how, if this behavior has been judicially determined to be violative, aren't these companies afraid to keep doing it? And they do it. And they're, well, you don't know. We don't have an answer. And my question was, who are you waiting to hear from? You're the
Mhm.
attorney for the board. Aren't you the last word? Who's going to guide you? That's another mystery of mine. And then,
Interesting. Well, I think we need to talk to some agents too. I think that a lot of our questions, you and I talking about it, that's great, but I think we need to pull in some agents as well, like really highly successful agents, because they're out there every day. They're hearing it. The public is hearing it. They know, and they're asking questions. And I'm curious to see what the agents are telling.
right, I want agents because
Sellers.
it affects them in the pocket, affects their future, and we want to hear them support. I want to get a point counterpoint. where I want to see what their impression was. I mean, they're going to defend their actions because they're legitimate up to now, or maybe even beyond now. But I want to hear some industry luminaries, some people who've been looked to represent the industry, to speak on the industry, they go on the circuit,
Mhm.
they have some opinions. I'd like to,
Right.
get these social media pundits, talking heads, advisors, gurus, trainers, ninjas who want to advise. But now there's something to really, the meteor didn't hit Earth, but it's on its way.
Mhm. We see it coming for sure.
Right. And it's really, and it's gonna, when it's gonna happen, severe. And for all we know, that decision comes down, and if it does eliminate the clear cooperation policy, I don't know how far-reaching that would be outside the jurisdiction. Whether it's Kansas and Missouri, whatever that is. How is it possible that other states' actions are going to be seen differently? I mean, why would that create such a precedent? Such,
Mhm.
the notion of all raised judicata, which is not really applicable because it says that the matter's been decided, but only there. So, I mean, it's not dispositive, but it's certainly persuasive. Hey, look what happened there. I mean,
Mhm.
be the same. The arguments can't change.
Mhm. And
So,
there's lawsuit after lawsuit. I mean, yesterday there was another one, right? That just came out in Georgia. You're going to keep seeing this. We know this. So, what are we doing about it? That is the question. What are we doing about it?
there's also the interest of judicial economy, where wouldn't it be bad if everywhere is these onslaughts? It means discovery and motion practice and court time and decisions. At one point, they're going to try to preserve resources and say, okay, the DOJ is going to say enough. I mean, the people spoke. The people in this jury. There's
Hmm.
more people. The classes are going to be certified. Do we really want to have every case motion to dismiss, motion to declassify, motion to oppose class? They need every case to go through the whole thing and take
Right.
4 years.
It's exhausting, right?
Right. Talk about a waste of resources.
Hmm.
That they may be some daddy walks in the room and says, "Hey, enough of you kids." DOJ says enough. Stop this. What's the word? Stop this shenanigans. Remember they used to say that. Stop the shenanigans.
Stop the shenanigans.
Go to
Yeah.
bed. It's over. Go to bed. Today's over. And
Hmm.
so look, we're here. We're doing this for forever. We want to let you know there's a problem. Want to give you the reasons why. We want to tell you there's a solution, and we propose a solution. And it's not for everyone. Giving some hard classroom work and some learning and some commitment and dedication to being better. I would say it's a, a, attractive to maybe 1-2% of the people. Just like getting in. How many people do CrossFit? How many people have perfect physical condition? Certainly not everyone.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
it's something that
Well,
we
all I can say is we both know we have a problem. I can't wait to hear from some other agents and see where the solutions will lie
right. We'll
and
compile.
what's going to happen tomorrow.
Okay. Talk soon. Thank you.